Did you know the idea of a New Year's resolution goes way back? The ancient Babylonians made promises to their gods at the start of each year. They hoped to get back in their good graces. The Romans did something similar. Their god Janus, the one with two faces, looked back to the old year and forward to the new. People offered sacrifices to him and made promises for the coming year. It was a serious business. But what about the Middle Ages? That long stretch of time between the fall of Rome and the Renaissance. We think of it as dark and dirty, full of nights and plagues. But the people living then were just like us in many ways. They had hopes, they had fears, they wanted to be better people. They didn't have New Year's resolutions like we do, with gym memberships and diet plans. Their resolutions were woven into the fabric of their lives. They were about faith, community, survival, and skill. What if we looked back at their world? Not to copy it, but to see what we've lost. Our world is fast, loud, and connected by screens. Theirs was slow, quiet, and connected by hands and voices. Maybe their promises to themselves hold some wisdom for us. Maybe their way of life points to something we're all missing. What if the best way to move forward into a new year is to take a long look back? What if the most modern resolutions are actually medieval? Number 22. What if your job was also your family? We think of work as one thing and life as another. We talk about work-life balance. We clock in, we clock out. Our coworkers are just people we see for 8 hours a day. We might be friendly, but we're not family. It wasn't always like this. In the medieval city, your work was your identity. It was your community, it was your social safety net. This was the world of the guild. A guild was an association of artisans or merchants. You had the Weavers Guild, the Bakers Guild, the Masons Guild. If you were a craftsman, you belonged to one. It wasn't a choice, it was a necessity. The guild did many things. It controlled the quality of goods. A baker in the London Bakers Guild had to make bread of a certain weight and quality. If he didn't, he'd be punished, maybe even dragged through the streets with a bad loaf of bread tied around his neck. This protected the customer. It also protected the reputation of all bakers. But the guild was so much more than a quality control board. It was a brotherhood. It set the path of your life. You started as an apprentice, a young boy living in the master's house. You learned the trade, but you also learned how to be a man. After 7 years, you became a journeyman, traveling and honing your craft. Finally, if you were good enough and could produce a masterpiece, you became a master yourself. You could open your own shop and take on your own apprentices. The guild was your social security. If a guild member fell sick, the guild would support his family. If he died, the guild would pay for his funeral and take care of his widow and orphans. They celebrated religious festivals together. They marched in parades together. They settled disputes between members. Your guild brothers were the people you trusted most in the world. Your work wasn't just a way to make money, it was your entire social world. The historian Sylvia Thrupp, in her book The Merchant Class of Medieval London, showed how these guild connections created powerful social and political networks that ran the entire city. A resolution is this: find your guild. We are atomized individuals. We work in cubicles or from home. We communicate through Slack and email. We are losing what sociologists call social capital. Robert Putnam wrote a famous book in 2000 called Bowling Alone. He showed how over the last few decades of the 20th century, Americans were dropping out of all sorts of community groups. Bowling leagues, church groups, volunteer organizations. We were becoming more and more isolated. And the research is clear. This isolation is killing us. A 2015 study from Brigham Young University found that chronic loneliness is as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So, how do you find a modern guild? It's not about your job. It's about a shared craft, a shared interest, a shared purpose. It has to be in person. Join a makerspace, a woodworking club, a community garden, a choir, a hiking group, a volunteer fire department. Find a group of people who do something together, something real, something you can touch, where you rely on each other, where you teach the beginners and learn from the masters. A place where you are more than just your job title, a place where you belong. This isn't just a hobby, it's a way to rebuild the community fabric that we've let unravel. What we still do not know is profound. Why has our species, which evolved in tight-knit tribes, created a global system that actively encourages isolation? Could the human brain in a state of chronic loneliness be fundamentally different on a chemical level from one embedded in a community? What crucial social and emotional skills did the guild system teach that our modern education system completely ignores? Number 21. Can you go a day without a distraction? Silence. When was the last time you experienced it? True silence. Not just quiet, but a deep, settled silence. No phone buzzing, no TV humming in the background, no podcast in your ears, no endless stream of notifications. For most of us, the answer is probably a long time ago. Or maybe never. We live in an age of constant noise, constant input. In the medieval world, silence was a default state. Life was quiet. The loudest sounds might be the church bell, the blacksmith's hammer, or the wind. But silence was also something people actively sought. It was a spiritual practice. Monks and nuns took vows of silence. The Benedictine rule, written in the 6th century by Saint Benedict of Nursia, laid out the daily life of a monastery. It had specific times for prayer, for work, and for reading, and it placed a huge value on silence. It wasn't seen as an absence of sound, but as a presence of something else. A space where you could hear yourself think. A space where you could hear God. The Carthusian order, founded in the 11th century, was even more extreme. Their monks lived as hermits within a larger monastery, spending most of their days in solitude and silence in their own small cells. They believed that by stripping away all external distractions, they could get closer to the divine. This wasn't just a Christian idea. Mystics in many traditions have valued silence as a tool for spiritual insight. Our resolution is to practice silence, not for a lifetime, but for a few minutes, or an hour, or even a whole day. Like, we are addicted to distraction. Nicholas Carr, in his book, The Shallows, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains, argues that our constant use of the internet is rewiring our neural pathways. We are becoming better at multitasking and skimming, but we are losing our ability for deep concentration, contemplation, and reflection. Our brains are being trained to crave the next little hit of information, the next notification, the next dopamine rush from a like. The science backs this up. Studies in neuroscience show that silence can be incredibly beneficial for the brain. In a 2013 study on mice, published in the journal Brain, Structure, and Function, found that 2 hours of silence per day led to the development of new cells in the hippocampus, a region of the brain associated with memory and learning. Silence literally helps your brain grow. Other research suggests it can reduce stress, lower blood pressure, and replenish our cognitive resources. When you are constantly processing input, your brain gets tired. Silence is like a reset button. So how do you practice silence in a noisy world? Start small. Put your phone in another room for an hour. Go for a walk without headphones, sit in a quiet room, and just be. Don't try to meditate or do anything special. Just sit. It will be hard at first. Your mind will race. You will feel a powerful urge to check your phone. That feeling is withdrawal. Notice it and let it pass. Maybe try a digital Sabbath 1 day a week with no screens. This isn't about rejecting technology. It's about controlling it instead of letting it control you. It's about carving out a small, quiet space in your life where you can hear yourself think again. But what do we still not understand? What is the long-term neurological effect of a childhood spent with zero experience of true silence? If our brains are being fundamentally rewired by constant stimulation, are we evolving into a new kind of human, and is that a good thing? Could there be a form of auditory nutrition that we are completely ignorant of, where certain kinds of silence are essential for a healthy mind? Number 20. What if you had to make your own entertainment? Imagine a winter evening in the 14th century. It's dark, it's cold, there's no electricity. No Netflix, no internet, no books, unless you are very wealthy. What do? You don't consume entertainment, you make it. People gathered around the fire. They told stories, they sang songs, they played music on a pipe or a drum, they played games like chess or dice. Entertainment was participatory, it was communal, it was creative. A traveling storyteller, or scop, was a celebrity. He would arrive in a village and hold everyone captive with tales of heroes and monsters, like the epic poem Beowulf, which was passed down orally for centuries before it was ever written down. Every person had to have some skill in entertainment. You needed to know a few songs. You needed to be able to tell a good story. You needed to be able to participate. This wasn't a world of passive consumers. It was a world of active creators. Even religious plays, the famous mystery plays of cities like York or Chester, were community productions. The different town guilds would each be responsible for staging one part of the Bible story on a pageant wagon that was rolled through the streets. The shipwrights might do the story of Noah's Ark, the bakers might do the Last Supper. It was a massive town-wide effort. Our resolution is to create more than you consume. We live in an age of infinite consumption. We can stream any movie, any song, any TV show at any time. We scroll through endless feeds of content created by other people. It's easy. It's passive. And it can leave us feeling empty. The average American spends over 7 hours a day looking at a screen, according to a 2022 report from Data Reportal. Much of that time is spent passively consuming media. The psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi developed the concept of flow. A flow is that state of being completely absorbed in an activity. Time seems to disappear. You are fully engaged and energized. It's the opposite of passive consumption. Csikszentmihalyi's research found that people report their highest levels of happiness and satisfaction when they are in a state of flow. And you don't get into flow by watching Netflix, you get into it by doing something that challenges you. Something creative. So, pick up a creative hobby. Learn to play the guitar. Take a pottery class. Start writing that story you've always thought about. Learn to draw. Join a community theater group. It doesn't matter if you're good at it. The goal isn't to become a professional artist. The goal is to switch from being a consumer to a creator. To use your hands and your mind to make something that wasn't there before. To spend one evening a week making your own entertainment instead of just watching someone else's. This act of creation is a fundamental human need. We have outsourced it to corporations and we need to take it back. The questions that remain are fascinating. Is the human drive to create a biological imperative, like the need for food and sleep, that we are now starving? What is the psychological effect of consuming stories generated by algorithms versus stories told by another human being in the same room? If a society stops producing its own folk culture and only consumes mass-produced corporate culture, does it lose its soul? Number 19, could you survive on what grows near B? Go to a supermarket today and you can buy strawberries in December and asparagus in October. We can get any food we want from anywhere in the world at any time of year. It's a modern miracle, and it has completely disconnected us from the food we eat and the land it comes from. A medieval peasant didn't have this luxury. They ate what they could grow or what grew nearby. Their diet was dictated by the seasons. In the spring, they had fresh greens and herbs. In the summer, berries and early vegetables. The autumn was the time of the harvest, with grains, apples, and root vegetables that could be stored. In the winter, they lived on what they had preserved: salted meat, dried beans, pickled vegetables, and heavy bread made from stored flour. Their entire calendar revolved around the agricultural year. The book A Medieval Feast by Aliki Brandenburg gives a vivid picture of how food production and preservation dominated daily life. This wasn't just about what was available, it was about a deep connection to the rhythm of the year. Certain foods were associated with certain festivals. Feasting was a crucial part of life, but it was rare and special. It was the exception, not the rule. Their diet was simple, local, and seasonal. They were, by necessity, locavores. They understood the land around them in a way we can't even imagine. They knew which wild plants were edible, which mushrooms were safe, and where to find nuts and berries. Our resolution is to eat seasonally and locally for 1 month. Just one. This means no tomatoes from Mexico in January. No grapes from Chile in March. It means going to a farmer's market and seeing what is actually growing in your area right now. It means learning to cook with winter squash, cabbage, and root vegetables in the winter. It means waiting with anticipation for the first asparagus of spring. This is more than just a diet. It's a way of reconnecting with the natural world. It has huge environmental benefits. The average food item in the United States travels 1,500 miles to get to your plate. Eating locally drastically reduces your carbon footprint. It also supports your local economy and small farmers instead of massive agricultural corporations. But there are also personal health benefits. Research, like a 2008 study published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry, has shown that produce that is allowed to ripen naturally in its own season often has a higher nutritional content than produce that is picked early and shipped across the world. And let's be honest, a tomato picked from a local farm in August tastes 1,000 times better than a hard pink one from the supermarket in February. This resolution will force you to be more creative in the kitchen. It will teach you about the place you live. It will reattune your body to the cycles of the year. It's a small act of rebellion against a globalized food system that has given us convenience but has cost us connection, flavor, and sustainability. We are left with some unsettling questions. How much has the nutrient density of our food declined over the past century due to industrial farming and long-distance shipping? By severing our diet from the seasons, have we disrupted subtle biological rhythms in our own bodies that we don't even understand yet? What knowledge about local ecosystems and wild edibles has been permanently lost in just the last 3 generations? Number 18, what if you had to mend everything you owned? Look around your room. How many of the things you own could you fix if they broke? Your phone, your laptop, your microwave? Probably not. We live in a throwaway culture. When something breaks, we replace it. It's often cheaper and easier than trying to get it repaired. In the medieval world, almost nothing was thrown away. Everything was precious. A piece of cloth, a wooden bowl, a metal tool. These things were made by hand, slowly and with great effort. They were expensive. If a shirt got a hole in it, you mended it. When it was too patched to wear, you cut it up into rags. If a pot broke, you took it to a tinker to be fixed. The idea of throwing something away because it was a little bit broken would have seemed like madness. People's wardrobes were tiny by our standards. A peasant might own 1 or 2 sets of clothes. That's it. They had to last for years. This meant that mending wasn't just a chore, it was an essential life skill. Everyone knew how to sew a patch, darn a sock, or sharpen a tool. This culture of repair bred a different relationship with material possessions. People didn't just own things, they cared for them. They understood how they were made. Their possessions told a story of use and repair, of a life lived. We can see this in archaeological finds. Old leather shoes are found with multiple patches. Pottery is found that was clearly drilled and laced back together after breaking. Our resolution is to learn to mend one thing. Instead of throwing away the next item that breaks, commit to fixing it. That sweater with a hole in the elbow, learn to patch it. That wobbly chair leg, learn how to glue and clamp it. That bike with a flat tire, learn to patch the tube. There are countless videos online that can teach you these basic skills. This is an act of defiance against consumerism. It saves you money, it reduces waste, and is better for the environment, but the benefits are deeper than that. The writer and philosopher Matthew B. Crawford wrote a book called Shop Class as Soulcraft. He argues that, working with your hands and fixing things is deeply satisfying. It connects us to the physical world, it builds competence and self-reliance. When you fix something yourself, you understand it better. You appreciate it more. You move from being a passive consumer to an active and capable agent in your own life. Start a small mending kit, a needle and thread, some basic tools, some glue. The next time you're about to throw something in the trash, stop and ask, could I fix this? The feeling of bringing something broken back to life with your own hands is a powerful antidote to the helplessness of modern consumer culture. But this raises some deep questions. Has the design of modern products, with their planned obsolescence and unrepairable electronics, intentionally de-skilled an entire population? What is the psychological cost of living in a world where we don't understand how any of the objects we rely on actually work? If we lose the ability to mend our possessions, do we also lose a certain kind of resilience, an ability to mend our own lives when they break? Number 17, how far could you walk in a day? We think of travel in terms of hours and miles per hour. We get in a car, a train, or a plane. We are transported, we are passive passengers, often looking at a screen. The landscape blurs by. We arrive at our destination having experienced very little of the journey in between. For medieval people, the primary mode of transport was their own 2 feet. The world moved at the speed of a walk, about 3 miles an hour. A journey of 20 miles was a full day's travel. This shaped their entire perception of distance and space. The next village wasn't a 5-minute drive away, it was an hour's walk. This made the world feel both much larger and much smaller. Larger because distant places were genuinely hard to get to. Smaller because your entire life was lived within a walkable radius. Walking wasn't just for getting from A to B, it was an end in itself. Pilgrimage was a central part of medieval life. People would walk for weeks or months to visit a holy shrine, like the tomb of St. James at Santiago de Compostela in Spain, or Thomas Becket's shrine at Canterbury, famously described in Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. These were not holidays, they were arduous spiritual journeys. The slow, rhythmic act of walking, day after day, was a form of meditation. It was a way to reflect, to pray, to leave your old life behind and be transformed. The journey was as important as the destination. Our resolution is to walk more, not on a treadmill, but outside. And not just for exercise, but for transportation and for its own sake. Can you walk to the store instead of driving? Can you walk to a friend's house? Can you dedicate one day a month to a long walk, a micro pilgrimage? Pick a destination a few miles away, a park, a church, a landmark, and walk there. Leave your headphones at home. The benefits of walking are immense and well documented. A 2018 study in the British Journal of Sports Medicine found that regular walking can reduce the risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and some cancers. It's good for your body, but it's also good for your mind. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard said, "I have walked myself into my best thoughts." Many writers and thinkers have sworn by the creative power of walking. A 2014 study from Stanford University found that walking boosts creative output by an average of 60%. The steady rhythm of walking seems to allow the mind to wander and make new connections. When you walk, you experience the world differently. You notice the details. The cracks in the pavement, the smell of the air, the sounds of your neighborhood. You move through the world rather than just over it. It connects you to your local environment in a way that driving never can. It's a way of slowing down in a world that is always telling you to speed up. What are the unanswered questions here? Is there an optimal walking speed or rhythm for triggering creative thought? And does it differ from person to person? How has the modern, car-centric design of our cities and suburbs physically limited our ability to think and feel in ways that were natural to our ancestors? If the human body and brain evolved with long-distance walking, what essential functions are we neglecting by living sedentary lives? Number 16, who are your elders and what are their stories? In our modern culture, we often worship youth. We value innovation, disruption, and newness. Old age is something to be feared and avoided. We hide our elderly away in retirement homes and assisted living facilities. We see them as a burden, as people who are out of touch. Their wisdom is often dismissed. This is a very recent development in human history. In medieval society, as in most traditional cultures, age was revered. The elders were the living libraries of the community. In a world without widespread literacy, memory was everything. The elders held the history of the village, the genealogies of the families, the knowledge of customary law, and the agricultural wisdom passed down through generations. They were the storytellers, the advisors, and the judges. Their long experience was seen as an invaluable resource, not a liability. The Council of Elders was a real and powerful institution in many communities. To disrespect an elder was a serious social offense. This respect was built into the social structure. In the feudal system, loyalty and obligation flowed both up and down. A lord had an obligation to care for his aging vassals. Within families, multi-generational households were the norm. Grandparents lived with their children and grandchildren, playing a vital role in raising the young and running the household. Their wisdom was a daily presence in people's lives. Our resolution is to connect with an elder. This could be your own grandparent, an elderly neighbor, or a volunteer in a nursing home. The goal is simple. Listen to their story. Ask them questions. What was the world like when they were young? What was the most important thing they learned in their life? What are they proud of? What do they regret? This act has profound benefits for both of you. For the elder, it is a powerful affirmation that their life and their experience matter. A 2016 study from the Stanford Center on Longevity showed that older adults who mentor and support younger people report higher levels of happiness and a greater sense of purpose. Loneliness is an epidemic among the elderly, and your time and attention are a powerful antidote. For you, it is an opportunity to gain perspective, to connect with a living piece of history, and to understand that the world you live in was not inevitable, to learn from someone's successes and failures. The author and physician Atul Gawande, in his book Being Mortal, explores how modern medicine often fails the elderly by focusing on extending life rather than ensuring its quality and meaning. Connecting with the old is a way of grappling with our own mortality and thinking about what makes a life well lived. Turn off your podcast, put down your phone, and go listen to someone who has seen more of life than you have. The questions this raises are urgent. What is the societal cost of systematically ignoring the accumulated wisdom of a quarter of our population? If children are raised without the daily presence of grandparents, do they develop a different, perhaps more fearful, understanding of the aging process? As we live longer and longer lives, have we created a new stage of human existence that we have absolutely no cultural script for? Number 15, could thinking about death make you happier? We do everything we can to avoid thinking about death. We use euphemisms. We say someone passed away or is no longer with us. We hide the dying in hospitals and the dead in funeral homes. The subject is taboo. It's morbid. It makes us uncomfortable. The medieval person did not have this luxury. Death was a constant and visible presence. Infant mortality was high. A simple infection could kill you. The Black Death, which swept through Europe in the mid-14th century, killed an estimated 30 to 50% of the population. People saw death up close all the time. Because of this, they thought about it a lot, and they developed a culture around it. This wasn't just about fear, it was about preparation. The idea of the memento mori, remember you must die, was everywhere. Skulls and skeletons appeared in paintings and sculptures, not to be scary, but as a reminder. The Dance Macabre, or Dance of Death, was a common artistic theme, showing people from all walks of life, popes, kings, peasants, children all being led away by death. The message was clear: death comes for everyone, so live your life well. There were even popular books called Ars Moriendi, The Art of Dying, which gave advice on how to die a good Christian death. This constant awareness of death wasn't meant to be depressing, it was meant to be clarifying. It was a tool to help you focus on what really mattered. If you know your time is limited, you are less likely to waste it on petty arguments, trivial pursuits, or the accumulation of wealth. You are more likely to focus on your soul, your relationships, and your legacy. Our resolution is to practice memento mori, to consciously and regularly remember that we are going to die. This might sound grim, but modern psychology suggests the medievals were onto something. Terror management theory is a field of social psychology based on the work of Ernest Becker and his book, The Denial of Death. It proposes that the fear of death is a primary motivator of human behavior. Studies within this framework have found that subtle reminders of mortality can have surprisingly positive effects. They can make people more compassionate, more generous, and more focused on intrinsic values like love and community rather than extrinsic ones like fame and money. Steve Jobs, in his famous 2005 Stanford commencement address, said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life, because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important." So, how do you do this? You don't have to be morbid. You can keep a small reminder on your desk. You can take a moment each morning to reflect on the preciousness and fragility of life. You can visit a cemetery and read the headstones. You can use an app like WeCroak, which sends you a quote 5 times a day to remind you of your mortality. The point is not to dwell on death, but to let the reality of death inform how you live your life right now. But what do we still not know? If the human brain evolved sophisticated mechanisms to deny the terror of its own extinction, is actively confronting it a dangerous psychological game. What are the neurological differences between a society that sees death daily and one that has successfully sanitized it from view? Could our modern epidemics of anxiety and meaninglessness be a direct result of bottling up our most fundamental existential fear? Number 14, can you master a skill that takes a decade? We live in a world of instant gratification and life hacks. We want to learn a language in 3 months, get a beach body in 6 weeks, and become a master coder in a year. We are impatient. We celebrate the overnight success, the viral sensation. We value speed and efficiency above all else. The medieval craftsman had a very different view of time and skill. The path to mastery was long, slow, and arduous. It was a journey of a lifetime. Think of the stonemasons who built the great cathedrals of Europe, like Notre Dame in Paris or Chartres Cathedral. The construction on these buildings often took 100 years or more. A mason might spend his entire working life on a single project, knowing he would never see it completed. His training followed the guild system. He would start as a boy apprentice, doing the most menial tasks, carrying water, mixing mortar, learning the names of the tools. For years, he would watch and learn. Then, as a journeyman, he would learn to cut stone, to lay it, to carve simple shapes. Only after decades of practice would he become a master mason, capable of the intricate carvings and complex geometry that these buildings required. His skill was not something he learned from a book. It was embodied, it was in his hands, his eyes, his muscles, and it was a deep, intuitive knowledge born of countless hours of repetition and practice. The historian Jean Gimple, in The Cathedral Builders, details the incredible level of practical, on-the-job knowledge these artisans possessed. Our resolution is to commit to a decade-long skill. Pick something complex, something that can't be hacked or rushed, and commit to practicing it slowly and patiently for the next 10 years. It could be learning a musical instrument. It could be a craft like woodworking or weaving. It could be a martial art. It could be a language. It could be gardening. The key is to change your mindset. The goal is not to arrive at a destination called mastery. The goal is to be on the path. To find joy in the process, in the small, incremental improvements. The author George Leonard, in his book Mastery, calls this practicing for the sake of practice. You embrace the plateaus, the periods where it feels like you're not getting any better, because you know they are part of the journey. This is a powerful antidote to our culture of impatience. It teaches you humility. It teaches you perseverance. It rewires your brain for long-term thinking. Research in neuroscience has shown that the long-term practice of a complex skill, like playing the violin, actually changes the structure of the brain. It builds new neural pathways and thickens the myelin sheaths around neurons, making them more efficient. This is the physical manifestation of skill. Don't worry about being a prodigy. Just put in the time, a little bit every day or every week, for years. In a world that is obsessed with what's new and what's next, there is a quiet power in dedicating yourself to something old and slow. Something that connects you to generations of craftsmen who knew that true skill is not a trick, it's a lifetime of devotion. The unanswered questions are profound. In an age of AI that can generate masterful art or music in seconds, is there still a purpose for human mastery of these skills? What happens to a person's sense of self-worth when the skills they've spent a lifetime acquiring become obsolete overnight? Does the slow, deliberate process of mastering a physical craft confer psychological benefits that cannot be replicated by any other activity? Number 13, what if your word was your bond? We live in a world of contracts, fine print, and digital agreements that we scroll through and click I agree without reading. We assume that people will try to get out of their obligations if they can. We rely on a complex legal system to enforce promises. Our trust is not in the person, but in the system. In medieval society, for the vast majority of people who were illiterate, a person's word was everything. Oaths were a cornerstone of society. A vassal swore an oath of fealty to his lord. A guild member swore an oath to uphold the rules of his craft. People swore oaths in court on holy relics. An oath was a sacred promise made before God. To break an oath was not just a legal problem, it was a sin that imperiled your immortal soul. This created a culture where personal honor and reputation were paramount. Your good name was your most valuable asset. If you were known as a person who kept their word, people would do business with you, trust you, and help you. If you were known as an oath breaker, you would be an outcast. The historian Mark Bloch, in his classic work Feudal Society, described this network of personal bonds and sworn loyalties as the very glue that held the social order together. Of course, people still lied and broke their promises, but the ideal, the social standard, was that a person's word was their bond. Our resolution is to be impeccable with your word. This is one of the 4 agreements from the book by Don Miguel Ruiz, but the concept is ancient. It means 2 things. First, say what you mean and mean what you say. Avoid gossip, white lies, and exaggeration. Speak with integrity. Second, and just as important, do what you say you will do. If you make a promise, keep it. If you say you will be there at 2, be there at 2. This seems simple, but it is incredibly powerful. When you consistently keep your word, even in small things, you build a powerful reputation. People learn that they can rely on you. This builds trust, which is the foundation of all strong relationships, both personal and professional. But more importantly, you learn to trust yourself. Like every time you keep a promise you make to yourself or to others, you are building self-respect. You are proving to yourself that you are a person of integrity, Conversely, every time you break your word, you chip away at that self-respect. You learn not to take your own commitments seriously. Being impeccable with your word is a practice of building personal power and character. Start small. For the next week, be hyper aware of every commitment you make, no matter how minor. I'll call you tomorrow. I'll send that email this afternoon. I'll take out write them down if you have to, and then, make sure you do every single one. It is a rigorous form of mindfulness. It will make you more careful about the promises you make and more diligent about the promises you keep. The questions that remain are troubling. In a digital world of anonymous comments and fake profiles, has the very concept of a good name become meaningless? If our legal system becomes the only reason to keep a promise, what has happened to our internal sense of morality? Can a society function long-term when its default assumption is that no one can be trusted at their word? Number 12, could you navigate by a map in your head? We have GPS in our phones and in our cars. We can get turn-by-turn directions to anywhere in the world. We never have to be lost. But this convenience has come at a cost. We have outsourced our sense of direction. Many of us would struggle to navigate our own cities without a phone. We don't build mental maps of our environment anymore. A medieval person's world was mapped in their head. Formal maps were rare and often inaccurate, more like artistic representations than navigational tools. The average person's map was a rich, three-dimensional tapestry of landmarks, paths, and stories stored in memory. They navigated by the sun, the stars, the shape of a hill, a particular old tree, a bend in the river. Their knowledge of their local area was incredibly detailed and intimate. This wasn't just about getting around. It was about a deep sense of place. The landscape was not just a physical space, it was a memory palace. And a particular spot might be where a famous battle was fought, where a saint performed a miracle, or where a local legend took place. The land was full of meaning. The author and environmentalist Robert Macfarlane, in his book, The Old Ways, walks the ancient paths of Britain and explores this idea of a storied landscape, where every feature has a name and a history. Our resolution is to build a mental map. Put your phone away for one day a week. When you go somewhere new, or even somewhere familiar, pay attention. Consciously try to build a map in your head. Look for landmarks. Notice the direction of the sun. Try to find your way home using a different route. Get intentionally and safely a little bit lost. The science behind this is fascinating. Neuroscientists at University College London, including Eleanor Maguire, have done extensive research on the brains of London taxi drivers. Before the age of GPS, these drivers had to pass an incredibly difficult test called the Knowledge, which required them to memorize 25,000 streets and thousands of points of interest in London. The studies found that these drivers had a significantly larger posterior hippocampus than the general population. The hippocampus is the part of the brain associated with spatial memory. Their brains had physically changed to accommodate this vast mental map. When we rely on GPS, we are not using this part of our brain. We are simply following instructions. A 2017 study published in Nature Communications showed that when people use GPS, the parts of their brain involved in creating spatial maps are essentially turned off. We are letting a crucial cognitive skill atrophy. Rebuilding this skill is not just a fun brain game. It changes your relationship with the world around you. It makes you a more observant and engaged participant in your environment, rather than a passive passenger being told where to turn next. It gives you a sense of confidence and self-reliance. It connects you to your home in a deeper way. But what do we still not understand about this? If the hippocampus is also crucial for memory formation and imagination, is our reliance on GPS subtly impairing our ability to remember our past and imagine our future? What is the evolutionary link between spatial navigation and storytelling? Two skills that seem to be deeply intertwined in the human brain. If we lose our ability to map the world outside, do we also lose some ability to map our own inner psychological world? Number 11. What do you owe to a stranger? Our society is highly individualistic. We are taught to look out for ourselves, to compete, to succeed. We might be kind to our friends and family, but our obligations to strangers are minimal. We might give to charity, but the idea of a deep personal responsibility for the welfare of a traveler or a person in need can feel foreign. In the medieval world, the concept of hospitality was a sacred duty. In a time when travel was dangerous and there were few inns, offering food and shelter to a traveler was a moral and religious obligation. Monasteries were particularly famous for their hospitality. The rule of Saint Benedict explicitly states that all guests should be received as if they were Christ himself. The monastery would have a guest house and an almoner, a monk whose specific job was to care for guests and the poor. This wasn't just about being nice. It was a core part of their worldview. Society was seen as a body politic, an idea popularized by thinkers like John of Salisbury in the 12th century. In this view, every person, from the king to the peasant, had a specific role to play and a set of obligations to everyone else. The health of the whole body depended on each part doing its duty. This included the duty of charity and hospitality. Taking care of a stranger was not just an act of kindness, it was an act of maintaining the social and cosmic order. Our resolution is to practice hospitality. This doesn't mean you have to let strangers sleep on your couch, but it does mean looking for opportunities to extend welcome and care to those outside your immediate circle. It could be as simple as inviting a new colleague or neighbor over for a meal. It could mean volunteering at a soup kitchen or a shelter. It could mean learning the name of the homeless person you see every day and offering them a coffee and a conversation. The sociologist Arlie Hochschild coined the term empathy wall to describe the obstacle that prevents us from understanding people with different lives and viewpoints. Practicing hospitality is a way of breaking down that wall. It forces you to engage with people who are not like you. It builds bridges in a society that is becoming increasingly polarized and fragmented. There is a growing body of research on the health benefits of altruism. A 2013 study from Carnegie Mellon University found that adults over 50 who volunteered regularly were less likely to develop high blood pressure. Other studies link prosocial behavior to lower rates of depression and a greater sense of well-being. When we help others, we are also helping ourselves. So, this year, open your door a little wider. See the stranger not as a threat or an inconvenience, but as an opportunity. An opportunity to practice compassion, to build community, and to affirm your own humanity. It is a small but radical act in an age of individualism and fear. The questions this raises are fundamental. Has our modern focus on individual rights completely overshadowed the traditional concept of mutual obligation? Can a large, diverse, and mobile society ever replicate the kind of ingrained hospitality that existed in small, stable communities? What is the psychological cost of living in a world where we are trained to view every stranger with suspicion? Number 10, how long can you focus on one book? We read all the time. But how do we read? We skim articles online. We scroll through social media feeds. We jump from link to link. We read headlines, summaries, and bullet points. We are constantly taking in small snippets of information. This is a form of reading, but it is not deep reading. In the medieval period, books were rare and precious objects. Before the invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg around 1440, every book had to be copied by hand by a scribe, usually a monk in a monastery. A single book could take months or even years to produce. Because of this, books were read differently. They were read slowly, carefully, and repeatedly. The practice of lectio divina, or divine reading, was developed in the monastic tradition. It was a way of reading the Bible, but the method can be applied to any text. It involves 4 steps lectio reading, meditatio meditation, oratio prayer or response, and contemplatio contemplation. You read a short passage, you meditate on its meaning, you respond to it, and then you rest in a quiet state of contemplation. This is the opposite of speed reading. It's a slow, immersive, and transformative engagement with a text. You don't just extract information from the book, you allow the book to change you. Our resolution is to deep read one challenging book. Pick a classic, a foundational text in philosophy, a dense history, or a complex novel, and read it slowly over the course of several months. Don't just read it, engage with it. Keep a notebook. Write down your thoughts, questions, and reflections. Look up words and references you don't understand. Read it with a pen in your hand. As Nicholas Carr argued in The Shallows, our online reading habits are eroding our capacity for this kind of deep, focused attention. We are losing the mental discipline required for sustained, linear thought. Reclaiming this skill is crucial. Marianne Wolf, a cognitive neuroscientist and the author of Reader Come Home, writes about the deep reading brain. She explains that the neural circuits required for deep reading are not innate. They have to be built and maintained through practice. These circuits are what allow us to make analogies, draw inferences, and feel empathy for the characters we read about. When we only skim, these circuits begin to atrophy. So this year, go on a long journey with a single book. Let it be your companion. Wrestle with its ideas. Allow yourself to be challenged and changed by it. It is a workout for your brain and your soul. It is a way of pushing back against the culture of distraction and reclaiming the quiet, focused space where real thinking happens. What do we still not understand about reading? As we transition from a print-based culture to a digital one, are we fundamentally changing the way our children's brains develop the capacity for empathy and critical thought? Could there be a cognitive tipping point where a society that loses the ability for deep reading also loses the ability to solve complex, long-term problems? What is the ineffable quality of a physical book that seems to encourage like a deeper form of engagement than a screen? Number 9, what if you couldn't buy it, but had to trade for it? Our economy runs on cash and credit. We have a universal medium of exchange. We can buy anything we want as long as we have the money. This is incredibly efficient. But it can also be very impersonal. The person who sells you your coffee or your clothes is just a functionary. The transaction is brief and anonymous. While medieval Europe did have coinage, much of the economy, especially at the local village level, ran on barter, credit, and personal relationships. A farmer might pay his dues to the Lord in the form of grain or labor. A blacksmith might trade a new set of horseshoes for a sack of flour from the miller. These were not simple, one-off transactions. They were part of a complex web of mutual obligation and trust built up over years. The historian Christopher Dyer, in books like Making a Living in the Middle Ages, shows that the medieval economy was a rich mix of cash, credit, and in-kind payments. This system required a different set of skills. You had to know the value of your own goods and labor. You had to be a good negotiator, and most importantly, you had to maintain a good reputation. Your ability to trade depended on people trusting that you would deliver on your promises. The economy was deeply embedded in the social fabric. A transaction wasn't just about the goods exchanged, it was about reinforcing a relationship. Our resolution is to engage in one act of barter. This is a way of stepping outside the cash economy and re-engaging with the idea of a personal, relational exchange. What skills do you have? What goods can you produce? Maybe you are a good baker. You could trade a loaf of sourdough bread with your neighbor for some of their garden vegetables. Maybe you are good at fixing computers. You could offer to help a friend with their laptop in exchange for them babysitting your kids. This simple act can be surprisingly radical. It forces you to think about what you have to offer the world beyond your ability to earn money. It builds community and mutual reliance. It reminds us that the economy is not some abstract force of nature. It is simply how we humans choose to exchange our time, our energy, and our creations with each other. The rise of the sharing economy and platforms for local exchange shows that there is a deep hunger for this kind of interaction. But you don't need an app to do it. Just start a conversation with a neighbor or a friend. I have too many tomatoes from my garden. Would you like to trade for something? This small gesture can open up a whole new way of thinking about value, wealth, and community. It repersonalizes the economic act. The questions this leaves us with are significant. What social bonds have been dissolved by the universal and anonymous nature of money? Is it possible to build a hybrid economy that combines the efficiency of cash with the community-building aspects of barter and mutual aid? If our global financial system were to collapse, how quickly would we be able to relearn these ancient skills of personal economic exchange? Number 8, do you know how your freedom was won? We take our rights and freedoms for granted. Freedom of speech, the right to a fair trial, the idea that no one is above the law. We assume these are the natural state of things. They are not. They were fought for over centuries at great cost. The medieval period was the crucible in which many of these ideas were first forged. One of the most important documents in the history of freedom is the Magna Carta, or Great Charter, which a group of rebellious barons forced King John of England to sign in the year 1215. The king had been abusing his power, raising taxes arbitrarily, and imprisoning people without cause. The Magna Carta was a list of demands that sought to limit the king's power and establish certain basic rights. Many of its clauses are specific to the feudal system of the time, but a few lines shine through the centuries. Here, Clause 39 states, "No free man shall be seized or imprisoned or stripped of his rights or possessions, except by the lawful judgment of his equals or by the law of the land." This is the foundation of the right to a trial by jury and due process of law. In Clause 40, says, "To no one will we sell, to no one deny or delay right or justice." This establishes the principle of equal justice for all. The Magna Carta was not a perfect document. The king immediately tried to repeal it, and it was reissued and revised many times. But the idea it established was revolutionary, that the law is above the king, that the government must follow its own rules. This principle is the bedrock of constitutional democracy all over the world. Our resolution is to read a foundational document of your country's liberty. For Americans, this could be the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution. For the British, it could be the Magna Carta or the Bill of Rights of 1689. For the French, the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. Read it. Not just the famous lines, but the whole thing. Try to understand what the authors were arguing against and what they were fighting for. In a time of political polarization and cynicism, it is easy to become disconnected from the history and the principles of our own societies. We see politics as a dirty game. We forget the ideals that are supposed to guide us. Reading these documents is a way of reconnecting with that source code. It is a reminder that citizenship is not a passive identity, it is an active responsibility. The historian and author Jill Lepore has written extensively about the importance of understanding our own history, arguing that a nation that does not know its own past cannot chart a course for its future. By engaging with these texts, we are educating ourselves as citizens, we are arming ourselves with the knowledge to participate more meaningfully in our own governance, and to hold our leaders accountable to the principles they are sworn to uphold. This leads to some critical questions. If a majority of citizens in a democracy are ignorant of the foundational principles of their own government, is it still a functioning democracy? How have the meanings of words like liberty, justice, and rights changed since these documents were written, and does that matter? At what point does a lack of civic knowledge become a national security threat? Or number 7, when was the last time you truly saw the night sky? For most of human history, the night sky was a spectacle. Away from the glare of modern cities, the darkness was profound. The Milky Way would have been a brilliant slash of light across the sky. The stars, planets, and constellations were vivid and familiar. The medieval person's relationship with the sky was deep and complex. It was their clock. The movement of the constellations told them the time of night and the time of year. It was their calendar, it was their map. Sailors navigated by the North Star. The sky was also a source of meaning and wonder. It was the realm of God and the angels. And it was the basis for astrology, which in the medieval period was considered a serious science, a way of understanding God's plan and a person's character. Geoffrey Chaucer, the author of the Canterbury Tales, was also an expert astronomer and wrote a treatise on the astrolabe, a manual for an instrument used to measure the position of the stars. We have lost this connection. The vast majority of people living in developed countries now live under skies so polluted with artificial light that they can no longer see the Milky Way. This is a profound loss. A 2016 study showed that 80% of the world's population lives under light-polluted skies. The night sky, a source of inspiration for art, science, and religion for millennia, has been erased from our common experience. Our resolution is to go see the stars. Find a dark sky spot. You might have to drive an hour or 2 out of the city. Go on a night with a new moon, take a blanket, lie on your back, and just look. Let your eyes adjust. It takes about 20 minutes for your night vision to fully kick in. Download a stargazing app on your phone to help you identify the constellations, but then put the phone away. This experience is more than just pretty. It can induce a powerful psychological state known as awe. Dr. Keltner, a psychologist at UC Berkeley, is a leading researcher on awe. His work has shown that experiencing awe, that feeling of being in the presence of something vast that transcends your understanding, has numerous benefits. It can decrease stress, increase feelings of connection to others, and make us more generous and less self-centered. Staring up at a truly dark night sky is one of the most reliable ways to experience awe. It gives you a sense of perspective. It reminds you of your small but beautiful place in a vast and ancient universe. This is also a way of connecting with a part of our shared human heritage that we are in danger of forgetting completely. To look up at the same stars that our medieval ancestors saw is to feel a connection across time. It is to reclaim a birthright that has been stolen from us by the glow of our own lights. But what are the truly unknown consequences of this loss? How has the erasure of the night sky affected the human imagination and our capacity for wonder? Is there a psychological or even physiological need for true darkness that we are starving our bodies and minds of? If we can no longer see our place in the cosmos, will we ultimately lose the perspective needed to solve our problems on this planet? Number 6, have you ever made something from scratch? We live in a world of finished products. We buy our food packaged, our furniture assembled, and our clothes off the rack. We are consumers of objects whose origins are a complete mystery to us. We don't know who made them, where they came from, or how they were put together. The medieval world was the opposite. Almost everything was made from scratch, often by the person who would use it or by a craftsman in the same village. A peasant woman would spin her own wool from her own sheep, weave it into cloth, and sew it into a garment for her family. A carpenter would fell a tree, hew the logs into beams, and build a house. The connection between raw material, labor, and finished product was direct and visible. This gave people a profound understanding of the material world. They knew the properties of wood, of stone, of wool, of clay. They had a hands-on, practical knowledge that we have almost entirely lost. This knowledge was not abstract. It was a form of intelligence that resided in the hands as much as in the head. The process of making something, from start to finish, was a part of everyday life. Our resolution is to make one useful thing from scratch, not from a kit, but from the most basic materials you can find. This could be a project of any scale. You could bake a loaf of bread, not from a mix, but from flour, water, salt, and yeast. You could carve a simple spoon from a piece of wood. You could knit a scarf from a ball of yarn. You could grow a tomato plant from a seed and eat the tomato. The goal is to experience the entire process of transformation. To take a raw, formless material and, through your own skill and effort, turn it into something useful and beautiful. This is a deeply human act. The philosopher and sociologist Richard Sennett, in his book The Craftsman, argues that the process of making things well for its own sake is a source of pride and a way of understanding the world. He writes, "The intimate connection between hand and head is a cornerstone of the craftsman's life. When you make something yourself, you appreciate the finished product in a different way. You understand the effort that went into it. You are less likely to take for granted the objects that surround you. This practice builds patience, problem-solving skills, and a sense of competence. It is a powerful antidote to the alienation of modern consumer culture, where we are disconnected from the physical reality of the things we own and use. It is a way of remembering that the world is not just something we buy. It is something we can also make." The questions that remain are vital. What cognitive skills atrophy when a child grows up without ever seeing how the basic objects of their life are made? Has our disconnection from the process of making things contributed to our environmental crisis by making us unaware of the true costs of our consumption? Is there a fundamental human satisfaction in making, and are we suffering from a collective deficit of that satisfaction? Number 5, can you defend an idea you disagree with? Our public discourse is broken. We live in echo chambers. We get our news from sources that confirm our existing beliefs. On social media, we argue with people on the other side, but we are not usually trying to understand them. We are trying to defeat them, to win the argument. We have lost the art of reasoned debate. In the medieval university, the primary method of teaching and learning was the disputation. This was a formal, structured debate on a question of theology or philosophy. A master would propose a question, for example, does God exist? Then, a student or another master would be tasked with arguing against the proposition. They would have to present the strongest possible arguments for the opposing view. After this, the first master would respond to each of these arguments, one by one, before finally presenting his own case for the proposition. This method, known as the scholastic method, reached its peak with thinkers like Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century. His masterwork, the Summa Theologica, is essentially a massive collection of these disputations in written form. For every question, he first presents a series of objections and the best arguments against his own position. He treats these arguments with respect. Only after fully articulating the counter-argument does he proceed to refute it and present his own view. The purpose of this was not to win. It was to arrive at the truth. The assumption was that the only way to truly understand your own position is to first understand and be able to articulate the strongest possible arguments against it. It was an exercise in intellectual humility and intellectual rigor. Our resolution is to practice the scholastic method in your own life. Take a political or social issue that you feel strongly about. Then, find the most intelligent and articulate person who holds the opposite view. read their book or watch their lecture, your goal is not to find flaws in their argument. Your goal is to understand their argument so well that you could explain it to a third person in a way that the original author would agree with. This is sometimes called an ideological Turing test. This is incredibly difficult. It requires you to set aside your own ego and your own biases and listen with genuine curiosity. But it is one of the most powerful intellectual exercises you can do. It will either strengthen your own position because you now understand the counter arguments and have a response to them, or it might cause you to modify your own view in light of new evidence or a different perspective. Either way, you win. This practice is the antidote to polarization. It replaces contempt with curiosity. It is a way of training yourself to be a better thinker, a better listener, and a better citizen. It is a commitment to the idea that the search for truth is more important than the need to be right. But this raises some fundamental uncertainties. Has our media environment, with its algorithms designed to feed us outrage, made it psychologically impossible for most people to engage in this kind of charitable listening? Is the human brain even wired to seek truth? Or is it wired to seek social validation and victory for our tribe? Can a democracy survive if its citizens lose the shared intellectual framework for reasoned debate? Number 4, what does it mean to be loyal? Loyalty is a word we still use, but its meaning has become thin. We talk about brand loyalty or loyalty to a sports team. In our careers, we are encouraged to be loyal only to ourselves, to always be on the lookout for the next better opportunity. Deep, lifelong personal loyalty can seem like an outdated, even foolish idea. In the medieval world, loyalty was the central virtue. The entire social structure of feudalism was built on a pyramid of personal loyalties. A knight swore an oath of fealty to a lord. That lord in turn swore fealty to a greater lord or a king. This was not a business contract. It was a deeply personal, sacred bond. The knight pledged to fight for his lord, to give him counsel, and to protect his family. In return, the lord pledged to provide the knight with land, protection, and justice. This bond was supposed to be unbreakable, more important than life itself. The great epic poems of the era, like the Song of Roland, are all about the glory and the tragedy of this feudal loyalty. Roland, a knight in the service of Charlemagne, is ambushed by a much larger army. He is too proud and too loyal to sound his horn for help, because it would bring his king into danger. He and his men fight to the last, a heroic and tragic sacrifice born of absolute loyalty. This kind of loyalty could be brutal, but it also gave life a powerful sense of meaning and purpose. Your life was not just your own. You were part of something larger. You had a place. You had a duty. You had a lord to whom you owed your life. Our resolution is to practice radical loyalty. This is not about blind obedience to authority. It is about choosing a person, a cause, or a community, and dedicating yourself to it with a fierce and unwavering commitment. In a world that encourages us to keep our options open and to constantly be looking for an upgrade, this is a countercultural act. Maybe it is loyalty to your partner or your family, a commitment to weather the storms and not just the sunny days. Maybe it is loyalty to a group of friends, the kind of bond that means you will drop everything to help them in a time of need. Maybe it is loyalty to a cause you believe in, dedicating your time and energy to it, even when it is difficult and you see no immediate results. This kind of loyalty requires sacrifice. It means sometimes putting the needs of another person or a group ahead of your own immediate wants. But it is also the source of life's deepest satisfactions. The psychologist Jonathan Haidt, in his book The Righteous Mind, talks about the human capacity for groupishness, our ability to find joy and transcendence in being part of a loyal, cohesive team. This is the feeling that soldiers in combat talk about. It is the feeling of, being part of something larger than yourself. In an age of transient connections and flexible commitments, the decision to be truly loyal to someone or something is a powerful statement. It is a way of building a life of meaning and substance, but the questions that linger are complex. In a globalized world, is the very idea of local, personal loyalty an obstacle to a more universal humanism? When does loyalty cease to be a virtue and become a vice, leading to tribalism, nationalism, and the exclusion of outsiders? Can we create new forms of loyalty that are inclusive and ethical for the 21st century? Number 3, where does your water come from and where does it go? We turn on the tap and clean water comes out. We flush the toilet and the waste disappears. It's magic. We are completely disconnected from the most basic systems that support our lives. We don't know the source of our water, the path it takes to get to us, or the process by which our waste is made safe. The medieval town dweller had a much more intimate relationship with their infrastructure. Water often came from a communal well, a spring, or a river. People had to fetch it themselves, in buckets. And they knew exactly where it came from. They knew if the river was running high or if the well was low. Monasteries and some larger cities, drawing on Roman engineering, had more complex systems of aqueducts and pipes, but the source was still known and visible. The book Life in a Medieval City by Joseph and Francis Gies provides detailed descriptions of these public works. Waste disposal was also a very public affair. Most houses had a privy, or latrine, that emptied into a cesspit in the backyard. These had to be cleaned out periodically by workers called gong farmers. In towns, waste was often thrown into the street or into a nearby river. This, of course, led to terrible sanitation and the spread of disease, but the point is, there was no way. People lived with their waste. They were forced to be aware of the consequences of their own consumption in a way that we are not. Our resolution is to understand your own personal infrastructure. This is a practical, investigative project. Find out the answers to 3 questions. 1. Where does your drinking water come from? Is it a river, a lake, a reservoir, an aquifer? Trace its path from the source to your tap. Or 2. Where does your sewage go? Find out the location of the wastewater treatment plant that serves your house. Learn how it works. 3. Where does your garbage go? What is the location of the landfill or incinerator that takes your trash? This might seem like a strange resolution, but it is a fundamental act of reconnection. It is about understanding the hidden systems that make your modern life possible. These systems are incredible feats of engineering, and we take them completely for granted. By learning about them, you develop a new appreciation for the resources you use every day. This knowledge also makes you a more responsible citizen. When you know that your water comes from a particular river, you are more likely to be concerned about the pollution of that river. When you know the location of your local landfill and how quickly it is filling up, you are more likely to think about reducing your own waste. This is a form of what some call bioregionalism, the practice of living in and understanding your specific place on Earth. It is an antidote to the placelessness of modern life. It grounds you in the physical reality of your own existence. The questions that remain are on a planetary scale. As megacities grow, are we building infrastructure systems so complex and fragile that a single point of failure could be catastrophic? By making our support systems invisible, have we lost the collective will to invest in their maintenance and improvement? What happens when a population that has never known water scarcity is suddenly forced to confront it? Number 2, can you see the sacred in the everyday? Our modern world is largely secular and disenchanted. We see the world as a collection of material resources to be used. A forest is a source of timber. A mountain is a place for recreation. We have lost the sense that the world is infused with meaning, with sacredness. For the medieval person, the entire world was a book written by God. Everything had a symbolic meaning. A lamb was not just a sheep, it was a symbol of Christ. A pelican was said to pierce its own breast to feed its young with its blood, making it a symbol of self-sacrifice. This way of seeing the world, as described by thinkers like C.S. Lewis in his book The Discarded Image, meant that the physical world was never just physical. It was constantly pointing to a deeper spiritual reality. The calendar was not just a series of days, it was a cycle of sacred time. You had feast days and fast days, holy days, holidays that marked the lives of the saints and the story of the faith. The rhythms of life were sacred rhythms. Even work could be a sacred act. The Benedictine motto was ora et labora, pray and work. Or labor was a form of prayer, a way of participating in God's creation. This doesn't mean life was perfect. It was often brutal and hard, but it was not meaningless. The world was charged with significance. Our resolution is to find a practice that re-enchants the world for you. This does not have to be religious in a traditional sense. It is about cultivating a new way of seeing. It is about looking for the sacred in the mundane. Maybe it is a practice of gratitude, taking time each day to notice and appreciate the small, ordinary things, the taste of your morning coffee, the warmth of the sun, the face of a loved one. The author Anne Voskamp's book 1000 Gifts is a powerful exploration of this practice. Maybe it is a practice of mindfulness, paying deep attention to the present moment without judgment. When you are washing the dishes, just wash the dishes. Feel the warm water. See the soap bubbles. This simple act of paying attention can transform a chore into a moment of peace and presence. Maybe it is a practice of spending time in nature, not just hiking through it, but sitting in it. Watching a tree for an hour, learning the names of the birds in your backyard. This can foster a sense of connection and wonder, a feeling that you are part of a living, intelligent system that is much larger than yourself. The goal is to push back against the modern tendency to see the world as a dead, meaningless machine. It is to cultivate the capacity for wonder. It is to find your own way of seeing that the ordinary is in fact extraordinary. But what are the truly deep unknowns here? Is the human brain hardwired for a sacred experience? And if so, what happens to us when our culture provides no outlet for it? Could the rise in mental health issues be linked to this disenchantment of the world, a loss of a shared sense of meaning and purpose? Is it possible for a technologically advanced scientific society to ever truly re-enchant its worldview? Or is that a door that, once closed, can never be reopened? Number 1, do you believe in anything worthy of a cathedral? Think of a medieval cathedral. It is an almost impossible object, built over generations, by hand, out of stone and glass. It is an expression of technology, of art, of community, and of faith. It is massively expensive, impractical, and took centuries to complete. Why would anyone build such a thing? The simple answer is that they believed in something so profound, so important, and so eternal that a cathedral was the only rational response. They believed in God, they believed in the promise of salvation, they believed that their work on earth had a cosmic significance. The cathedral was a sermon in stone. Its soaring height drew the eyes and the soul upward. Its stained glass windows told the stories of the faith to a population that could not read. It was the center of the city, the center of their world, a physical manifestation of their deepest beliefs. We don't build cathedrals anymore. We build skyscrapers, shopping malls, and data centers. These are the cathedrals of our age. They are impressive feats of engineering. But what do they point to? They point to commerce, to efficiency, to the flow of capital and information. They are monuments to our own power and our own consumption. This is the final and most difficult resolution. It is a question: what is your cathedral? What do you believe in that is so important that it would be worth dedicating your life and the lives of your children and grandchildren to building? What is the great long-term project that gives your life meaning? This is not necessarily about religion. Your cathedral could be a belief in justice, and you could dedicate your life to the slow, generational work of building a more just society. It could be a belief in knowledge, and you could dedicate your life to science or education. It could be a belief in beauty, and you could dedicate your life to creating art that will outlive you. It could be a belief in the future, and you could dedicate your life to environmental stewardship, to leaving behind a healthier planet for generations you will never meet. The point is that a human life needs a cathedral project. It needs a transcendent purpose, something larger than your own happiness, your own career, and your own lifespan. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote in his book Man's Search for Meaning that the primary human drive is not for pleasure, but for meaning. We need a why to live for. In our individualistic and short-term focused culture, it can be hard to even think on this scale. But the medieval cathedral builders challenge us. They challenge us to find something to believe in that is worthy of our best efforts, our deepest commitments, and our longest ambitions. They challenge us to start building something that we ourselves may never see finished. This is the ultimate medieval resolution: to find your purpose, to start laying the stones of your own cathedral, even if you only have time to lay one. And this leaves us with the most shocking questions of all. What if our modern society, with all its wealth and technology, is incapable of producing a shared belief system powerful enough to inspire a project like a cathedral? If we have nothing that we are willing to sacrifice for, that we are willing to build for generations, have we become a civilization in decline? What, in the final analysis, will our own empty, magnificent, and forgotten ruins say about us to the people of the future?